It's another day, the sun is shining. Got to know what's going on around you. Wake up, it's the time to motivate your mind. Come with me, let's make this moment brighter. Wake up with the Bahamas and sunrise. Come on and wake up with the Bahamas and sunrise. Wake up with the Bahamas and sunrise. Hey.
Welcome to Bahamas at Sunrise. Good morning to you. I'm Anastasia Palacios.
Good morning. I'm going to say it. Happy Monday to you. I'm Philip Simon.
And of course, it's a pleasure. It really is to be back in your company after our first weekend of curfew and a semi-lockdown over this past 3 or 4 days.
And you say semi, obviously, because some people didn't get the memo.
Well, I don't know if some people didn't get the memo. I think some people blatantly ignored the memo. And yeah, I mean, and again, a part of it is semi because the government didn't shut everything down. They really did say essential services can be open. You can leave if you need to go to this place, that place, or the next place. I saw people standing on lines outside the food store, so I assumed they were trying to do their thing. And then you drove past the beach and said it doesn't make sense that the food store has you on a line because clearly this is regatta.
Well, I always wondered about the standing outside on the line as though COVID is probably in the store, not on the line on the outside. I just don't understand it.
Yeah, I guess it's supposed to be like you're supposed to stand outside and stand 3 to 6 feet apart.
Right, but again.
They're at the beach, Phil, in mass groups.
Yeah, well, I must admit, after a while on Saturday morning, I did go out and I did go end up on a beach. There was just one other family on the entire beach, so maybe I just went early and didn't catch the people, but I did see some of those social media posts. It was regatta.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agreed. I went out. This is how I knew that the beach was full because we did go. My daughter was getting, I don't want to say that she was getting cabin fever. It might be that we were getting cabin fever and she was not helping because she's 2 and she wants to play. And so we decided that we'd take her to the beach yesterday afternoon. We live in an area where our beach is nearby and it's normally very secluded. We always call it our secret beach.
Right.
Yesterday we realized the secret was out. There was absolutely no secret there. Cars parked everywhere. So we decided not to go. We went and turned around and went to a friend lives in a condo where the beach is a bit more private, and going out there was only one other family as well. So, but it's kind of scary in one aspect that we have police pulling people off buses on one hand, not allowing them to go on last week Friday, and then you go and you drive past the beach, and literally there was an accident by one beach. We saw it because there's so many people out there. There are people jumping out of cars and hugging each other, and it's like, this is not it, guys.
Well, and it's just the beginning. And my fear is what happens next, right? And I shouldn't say my fear, concern is that what happens next. I mean, there's a possibility, depending on what happens by the 31st, or probably a strong possibility, that the curfew and these conditions can be extended.
And further enforced, right? Like,
and further enforced.
Yeah, more things taken away.
Going to become more agitated. I'm just, I don't even talk those types of things, but in the back of my mind, it's preparation for what's going to happen next. And really, I think the best thing that we can do is really, say it all the time here in Bahamas at Sunrise, continue to, as best as possible, be our brother's keepers and to share, right? To stay in this and be in this together, right? And if we can do that, I think we'll be fine. I mean, it's the Minister of Tourism called the outlook grim for the next several months, regardless of what happens relative to the virus itself. The economy is going to be taking a hit, and it reminds me of the needful things that we don't have need of.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Relax.
No. Indeed. And just, I think all of us ought to be grateful. Those of us that have jobs to go to today, those of us that may be working from home but still working, we've seen over the weekend a number of the hotels sending out notices that operations are shutting down. And what this does is it gives us time as a society to rethink how we've structured ourselves over these past few years and to take a look at the future and determine how we want to move forward. So hoping that you'll make the best of the day no matter the circumstance you found yourself in. And of course, we're continuing to pray as a nation that COVID-19 would pass us on by. Speaking of COVID-19, we're going to be talking about that again in the show today.
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Thomas is here. He's going to be talking about, well, how do you communicate this to children? You know, and obviously they know something's going on. They can't miss it. They're on social media more than we are, but it's really filtering the right message to them. So he's going to be talking about, how to care for them as well as how to communicate with them. We're also going to be speaking, we did an interesting interview with Dr. Nakia Forbes and George Giroux, the Director General of Tourism, just recently, and I'm going to be sharing that with our viewing audience as well. And hopefully the good bishop, I think he should be here, Bishop Lace Boyd, to talk about the church's response. And it's been interesting to see how everybody's making the adjustments, whether it's having the service outdoor in the parking lot or having it online. Quite a bit of adjustment that we all are making. And I think I'm announcing all the segments here because Peter Bridgewater is also here to talk a little bit about, what's this working from home thing? How are we making technological adjustments? What are the opportunities that businesses can take advantage of? All of that happening today.
And one more. And we also have Bahamas Air with us today. They're going to be talking about the airline and the airline industry, specific to Bahamas Air, and steps that they've been taking to try to organize themselves as best as possible to help us during this time. So we'll have that as well.
Did you know that Saul Kirsten passed away?
I did. I realized that over the weekend. And so, of course, we extend condolences to the entire Atlantis family, and then, of course, his family in particular. Saul would have certainly done a lot for
a hero. I think he was described as a hero in today's papers.
He's certainly been named as Sir Saul Kirsten as a result of his work here in the Bahamas. And so we extend those condolences to him and appreciate his legacy and what he's left behind. Before we get to any of the great conversations we'll have this morning, we're going to take a first look at weather with Godfrey Burnside.
Weather at sunrise, brought to you by Bahamas First in Insurance, today, tomorrow.
Thank you, Star, and good morning, Bahamas. And your first look at the weather at sunrise. High pressure continues the persistent weather feature dominating weather over the air with stable conditions and really on the dry side. And you can see why people are going to the beach. Beautiful weather over the weekend. Expect another beautiful day in store weather-wise. But we do see a weak front could move in here sometime on Thursday. But for the most part today, a lovely day, partly sunny and warm. A little breezy over the central southeastern islands with a chance of a few showers. And their high temperature reaching 84 degrees Fahrenheit. Tonight, we're looking at patchy clouds around on the mild side. Slight chance of 1 or 2 passing showers during nighttime hours. The low temperature going down to 71 degrees Fahrenheit. And some region highs and lows across the Caribbean. Barbados 82 and 76. In Jamaica 81 and 67. In Trinidad 84 and 74. And the Turks and Caicos Islands 82 and 71. Across North America, Atlanta 61 and 52. In Raleigh 57 and 45. In Miami 81 and 72. Dallas, Texas 71 and 54. And Toronto, Canada 39 and 32. As we go through the week, partly sunny skies. The chance of shower increases by late Wednesday and Thursday as a weak cold front approaches the extreme northwest Bahamas of Grand Bahama and Abaco. May not pass, may move into the northwest Bahamas and fizzle out sometime on Thursday. Temperature daytime could move into the upper 80s come Wednesday and Thursday, and then back into the mid-70s by Friday. That puts her up on your first look at weather sunrise. I'm Godfrey Burnside. Back to you, Phil.
Thank you very much, Godfrey. With a global pandemic on the rise, of course, business disruption is inevitable. Open Systems Technologies Bahamas has solutions for information management, business continuity planning, and more. Here to tell us all about this is Peter C. Bridgewater, President and CEO of Open Systems Technologies. And Peter, good to have you back on Bahamas at Sunrise. Of course, we're doing our social distancing. I think we got about 3 feet between us. But listen, thank you so much for coming out in the middle of the circumstances to talk about, well, how businesses can manage and better manage themselves in this time. But let's start with that word, business continuity. We hear it all the time. What exactly does it mean?
Well, good morning, Phil. It's a pleasure to be back here again, and especially in these circumstances to be able to provide support and lend information to businesses in terms of how they can plan and prepare for hurricanes as well as this pandemic, the coronavirus. What business continuity is a process of planning for business disruption, looking at what it would take to recover your business, the time it would take, and the equipment, the technology, the persons, the human capital is very important that you would need in order to recover your business in a certain period of time.
Does it work for all types of businesses? I would imagine there are some limitations, particularly during a crisis like this, in terms of what types of business can be continued.
Well, when we look at the process of business continuity planning, all businesses can benefit from that, even right down to the home. It's important that even in families to prepare for hurricanes, pandemics, as we are going through right now. So everyone can benefit from the process of planning. It all depends on your business and what circumstances you need to be able to recover that business in a certain period of time.
Yeah, we talk about, and of course the government has also been encouraging this, working from home during this crisis. I would imagine open system technology has solutions for this type of approach to doing business. What would be some of them?
Well, one of the key things about a business is the knowledge or the information about that business, and that lies in the files, okay? And so no business could basically do their accounting, provide customer care, unless they have that information readily available. And so one of the things that we've been providing and marketing here in the Bahamas for the last 19 years is the ability to capture and store your information electronically. And nowadays with business processes, you can automate that. A person doesn't have to be in the office. They can use their mobile to be able to access information. And when we look at this pandemic right now, we don't know how long the curfew or the business interruption would be in place. And so being able to access your information remotely will be the key success of your business.
Is this what you call cloud-based types of solutions, or?
Well, we do offer cloud technology. We also offer on-premise technology. And the key to that is being able to access your information via mobile or a tablet.
Well, I guess we're talking about the whole digital world. Sometimes it can be a little intimidating for those persons who probably were not as exposed to it. But again, that's changed. I mean, the ease of doing business, particularly from a digital perspective, has increased. So what do you say to persons who might feel a little bit intimidated by the prospect? Well, obviously you would have had been prepared for this point, but what do you say to persons who may not have been as engaged in this type of approach to doing business in the past and now be faced with this type of situation?
Well, one of the things or the requirements of business continuity planning is stepping back and looking and analyzing the risk and the impact that it would be to your business, okay? And so based on that, what we do is we work with customers to be able to create a strategy. One, being able to digitize their documents. We hear a lot about digital transformation, which involves your human capital, your culture, and technology to benefit from using technology, especially in times like this. It gives businesses, no matter what size, even if it's a one-person business or entity, especially how we have the Small Business Development Center. I encourage those businesses, even as small as they are, to take a portion of their funding and use it to implement strategies for business continuity planning, like digitizing their documents so that they can work remotely in the event of a disaster or like this pandemic that is occurring right now globally around the world.
Yeah, sometimes there's also that fear of security risk when it comes to putting information out there. It's like one of the reasons why people are so hesitant to move to an e-cash type of environment. But is there, I mean, if you're going to be working from home, is there the increased threat of again, the other types of viruses or malware?
Well, there is that possibility, and that's one of the reasons why, as a company, we have partnered with a company that provides cybersecurity, as well as protecting from ransomware. When we look at the current situation now, many persons may be overwhelmed, go to the internet and download software just to be able to work from home. That's kind of dangerous right now. It's like the hurricane is here, and then you're trying to go outside to close your windows. What you do now is look back and take a retrospective view of your organization or your company, and then begin to plan and put these things in place. I think it's just about too late now to be able to download software, because the risk, I mean, we've seen it on the news and the internet, that some companies are being infected with ransomware, which means that they can there's the possibility of hackers taking over your information. So home working is very good, but you have to plan so that in the event occurrences like this happen, you would be ready.
Yeah, you talk about ransomware. I mean, you know, people think that's not a real thing. Certainly I can vouch for it. And I guess the most important thing is really having the information backed up on a daily basis, I would imagine.
That is key. That is key. And Open Systems provides solutions for that as well, like our service at our office. Every evening, those servers are backed up, and then they're scrubbed for ransomware. We get a notification on our mobile, my technical support and myself, to let us know that no ransomware has been found. And so having a good backup strategy is key and important for business continuity planning, for being able to, in the event of business disruption, to be able to successfully restore your business.
Yeah. You know, we've seen the headlines, even just recently, in terms of businesses making the adjustments. And of course, one of the first things that always happens is there is a review of your human resources. There could be a reduction in the number of persons on staff. Are there ways, or what are the ways possibly that OPS products and services can improve the efficiency to be able to keep a skeleton office operational, even if it's at home? Some people to work, some people at home.
Well, what we say to our customers and our clients is, it is key and imperative that at least the executive and key members of any organization have the access to be able to run and perform their activities and tasks remotely. What we have done is, for almost a year, I have done that in terms of working remotely, using just my phone or my tablet to be able to run my business. Okay, and that is something that every business can benefit from, so that in the event of circumstances like this, a pandemic, we don't know what's next in terms of hurricane, so that the business can continue, right? And that is one of the reasons for having a good business continuity planning process in your organization.
You're talking about, you know, obviously having your phone, but with regards to telecommunications, are there ways in which, you know, you can communicate without having to dial a number? I mean, it might sound a little, you know, different, but when you're in the office environment, obviously you can just pick up a phone and you dial an extension. Are there products or services that that allow for that type of communication in different environments, different home environments?
Yeah.
Business?
Well, one of the tools that we provide is a RPX planning solution. And what it enables businesses to do based on the business continuity plan that they have, as opposed to just using WhatsApp to provide information to their employees, to their business vendors, is using a product that we call RPX Planner. And what it enables us to do, or businesses to do, is to be able to provide notifications, plans, and about incidents remotely to their customers, to their family members, even to their employees, in terms of keep getting reliable information in terms of what's happening with the crisis, good for crisis management, so that they can be adequately prepared.
What as final word, Peter, what do you see the say to persons who are watching this right now, particularly those who might be concerned about what's happening next within their business? Obviously, you've given them great advice. You know, is it too late? I mean, is it too late right now to make the adjustment?
No, it's not too late.
Okay.
We can use this downtime to plan and to, as I said earlier, take a retrospective look at our businesses, at our organization, on how we can be more resilient in terms of the continuity and the planning in our organization. And one of the most important things is to be able to provide information and guidance to our employees in terms of how they can benefit and how they can keep themselves protected, especially during these times.
Yeah. I'm sure somebody wants to continue this conversation. How can they reach you?
Well, you can contact us on our website, www.opensystems-bs.com. We have our telephone numbers listed there. You can also go online and you can fill out a form that will come directly to us, and we are free to provide a free consultation in terms of how your organization can benefit by planning business continuity plannings, so that in the event of a pandemic or from a hurricane, whatever disaster it is, you can have continuity in your business.
All right, excellent. Peter Bridgewater, President and CEO, Open Systems Technologies Bahamas, been known as a very long time.
Yes,
doing it well.
yes.
Thank you so much once again for being
Thank
here
you.
on Bahamas at Sunrise. We'll be right back.
Good afternoon. First response. How can I help you?
I've been in an accident on West Bay Street. Can you send someone to help?
Yes, ma'am. A first response team will be there in 15 minutes. Are you hurt?
No, I'm fine, but a bit upset.
We're glad you're not hurt. Please, try to relax. Our team will take care of everything as soon as they arrive.
First Response provides immediate on-site service and support from the scene of an accident through the claims and repair process. And it's free to all Bahamas First insured drivers in New Providence every day for any type of accident. If you drive and want first response on your side, call 32FIRST or visit bahamasfirst.com for the name of an authorized Bahamas First agent. First response can't prevent an accident from happening,
But it can certainly ease your mind when it happens.
Incudus is a shared workspace company that provides services for professionals, freelancers, anybody that's in need of a turnkey solution for a private office space, a conference room rental, or part-time office space service. One of our main services that we provide to our members is high-speed internet access. There can be up to about 50 members within our space utilizing the internet and the Rev Voice services. And Rev has done an excellent job of dedicated, reliable, high-speed internet service.
Welcome back to Bahamas at Sunrise. Oftentimes we don't think about the interconnectivity of things until something like this happens. And then we realize how closely connected something like health and tourism are to the economy. Well, this morning we wanted to have the opportunity to interview two of the most brilliant minds in their respective fields, two names that you would be very familiar with, who have really been on the front lines of this pandemic in their respective fields by trying to make sure that the Bahamian public and those who visit us are safe. Very happy to welcome this morning Director General of Tourism, Georgia Ballou, and she's also joined by a lady that I now call internet famous, but who really has been doing a phenomenal job of just speaking about this crisis. She's a consultant with our Public Hospitals Authority. We have Dr. Forbes. Ladies, good morning and welcome to Bahamas at Sunrise.
Good morning and thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. I know a lot is happening, and so we appreciate this time out of your schedule. I'm not sure how much either of you have slept in the past week, but grateful that you could join us. Dr. Forbes, I'll start with you. We heard about this virus back at the end of December, early January. Phil and I actually mentioned it on the show, but at that time it was an epidemic. It was in China, and then recently the World Health Organization has called it a pandemic. Yes. What is the difference here?
Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for the question. So a pandemic is really a disease that has spread extensively worldwide, affecting multiple countries and regions and territories. So as you correctly said, we first heard about this. It's usually an infection We heard about it at the end of December, but gradually it spread so that we can see many countries are affected. In fact, every continent is affected except Antarctica. And as of last night, when I last checked the dashboard, there were over 160 countries that were reporting cases or a case of the novel coronavirus, and 19 Caribbean territories.
Wow, 160 countries, 19 Caribbean territories, but it started somewhere, and this is where I think you come in, right? Because the spread of this happened as a result of what?
That's a good question. So we think that this emerged in an epicenter, and it seems like most of the original cases had gone to a seafood market in Wuhan. And it appears, because that market sold a lot of animals, both live and dead, that this had an animal origin. It's called a zoonosis, that it could be a virus that starts in an animal, it could jump to other animals and then affect humans. And it's so terribly dangerous because we don't have natural immunity when you see something like a new virus emerge.
Wow. And then, of course, it moved from that epicenter throughout the region of China because people were traveling, right? And then people get on planes, and now 160 countries in the world, which, of course, has meant that we've had to take our own precautions here. And some of them were directly impacted tourism, right, Director? By making sure that we kind of tell certain countries, unfortunately, we can't accept you. How does that work from a tourism perspective?
And you're absolutely right. The connectivity between health and travel, especially when we're dealing with viruses or any illness that has the capacity to spread, the easiest way for it to spread is through travel. Everybody now feels it's their right to travel and visit other countries, but that means that you're exposed to whatever may be circulating, whether it's in on a plane, in an airport, or the place that you're visiting, and then you bring it back to your place of where you're residing. That's obviously what's happened in this situation, and to show you how globally connected we are, that just every continent except one in the world is now seeing people presenting with the coronavirus or COVID-19. It has just been incredible. The Bahamas took an early step when it restricted travel for persons who had traveled to China, and that was several weeks ago. We were ahead of the curve. In fact, many countries said, why would you take such a step? There should be free movement, etc. We felt it was the right decision for us, and this was based on what we were hearing from Ministry of Health, not acting in isolation, working together, listening to what the professionals were saying, and being guided by the science. And that decision actually proved to be the right one. And within a matter of days, we saw other countries following rapidly, including the U.S., after the Bahamas. And thereafter, a restriction came in for South Korea, Iran, Italy, and what's the fourth one I'm missing at that time? Japan. Those four were where we saw the spread was ever increasing, but knowing that we received visitors from those countries. And then after that, it just mushroomed. And every single country pretty much in the world took steps then to protect their borders. And so we were all acting, meaning countries, for the greater good of what was in the best interest of our countries.
So we had that, the greater good, which is an important phrase because, of course, Ministry of Health has continued to work with the government to issue guidelines that are quite restrictive to some people's imagination. And most recently, we've learned about this curfew that will occur for the everyday Bahamian. We know that schools have been closed. Why is it that the Ministry of Health is insisting on such strict guidelines as pertains to the movement of people?
Okay, thank you, Star. That's a very good question. I'm going to try to make it understandable in everyday English. When you have an infection like a virus, so viruses are invisible, but they cause symptoms, maybe days, sometimes on the higher end, weeks after exposure. And certainly with this virus, we know that persons can be asymptomatic and still spread the virus. Not as many as when you're symptomatic, but that can happen in any event. We have to keep in mind that we have to learn from the experience of other countries. In the United States, in California, their first case was someone that did not have a risk, as we call it. She did not travel anywhere. She had not been in contact with anyone with known cases. So we have to consider that context when we think about what it is that we're doing in country. We certainly are investigating very closely our first cases to determine, what was their risk and if there was a travel link, but we have to consider that there could be other persons that are having this new coronavirus and that are infectious and having mild symptoms. Because the symptoms are a lot like a common cold or flu, that is runny nose, fever, sore throat, then cough, and then shortness of breath. If you would get worse, it could be that persons think that they have the cold or the flu. Now, the trouble with all of this is that this virus is easily transmitted within close contact. I'm glad we're about 6 feet away from each other. Absolutely. So what that means is that persons can affect generally more persons. We think it's about one person can affect just over 3 other people, but it's something called exponential spread. One of your colleagues had said, so this can mushroom. If there are a few sick people, well then before you know it, more and more people get sick, and then before you know it, everybody is sick. And that's what happens in pandemics. So things can look fine one day no one is sick, and then in a short period of time, everyone is sick. So that is a challenge, because that means that if a large portion of your population, and I think the last population projection was that we have just about 390,000 persons that are living in the Bahamas. We know a lot of them live in New Providence. If all of those people get sick, we know 80% of them will be okay, but 20% of them will not be okay. They will have more moderate symptoms needing them to be hospitalized. Then 5% of them will be really, really ill. And some of them are going to need oxygen. Probably most of that 20% will need oxygen or more serious care. Now remember, how can the healthcare system deal with all of that? We still have the same number of doctors and nurses and hospital beds and ventilators and capacity. And so that means that if you have a major problem, if things are in a serious situation where you have a lot of cases suddenly, the healthcare system will be overwhelmed. And no matter what you do, no matter how many resources or how rich you are as a country, you will not be able to manage. And that's why when you look on your TV, you will see rich countries that are resource endowed, having challenges and having to make difficult decisions about who will live and who will die. That is really happening, a reality in this time. So what do you do? So that means that you should have prepared and planned. And certainly, as director said, we have been doing this and meeting across sectors as a good example of teamwork from the beginning, from when we knew there was a problem in China. But your plan has to be able to be operationalized, and it has to be able to be action points now. At the first time or sign that you see trouble, you must do some things. All of these things, people say, what else do you have to say for us, doctor? You all are just talking about hand washing, keeping away from people, not touching your face, but that's what needs to be done. And sometimes when people can't do that for themselves, because there are certainly people out there that have said, they're just overreacting about this virus. I saw that. I can share with you. I saw that in a message yesterday. We can still have that cookout and so on, because they're just overreacting about this virus. All you have to do is clean your surroundings and we can still come together. That's not true. Because if you come into close contact with someone else, people will get sick, and the vulnerable, those with illnesses, will die, and the healthcare system will get flooded. Sometimes there has to be strict enforcement measures that governments and countries and health officials have to recommend and enforce to stop people from mixing. There is a PowerPoint going around. I'll show it to you later on. Maybe you can show it somewhere during the show. That talks about the power of social distancing. If you can reduce one person affecting 3 other people, who then affects 9 other people, then 81 and so on. If you can reduce that down, fewer people will get sick. Meaning that even though people will still get sick, the healthcare system hopefully will have the capacity to manage it. But I know that was a very long answer, but it really, really is very important. If anybody wants to hear more about this, look and Google the Spanish flu in 1918. 500 million people worldwide were affected. They had no immunity. So that's why we have to do what we're doing right now. I hope it explained it in everyday language.
I think you explained it very well. And you know, Dr. Director, I'm going to come back with you for our last question, but when you talk about this idea that these numbers of people really come down to a matter of life or death, I think about our tourism economy, which for us, in a sense, is economic life or death. And we've made the decision that we will take a hit this time because we have to think long term about what it is that we want. So for you, Director, the steps might seem extreme. We know that casinos have closed. Hotels have said to people, you know, we're going to have to cut back now. We won't be able to pay. What is the ministry's hope in the long term that we'll be able to do as a result of taking the steps that you've taken?
So, Star, I also want to put it in perspective. Well, first of all, when you hear the passion of that response, you can understand why we supported wholeheartedly to take the steps that we did. You know, as you said rightly, you take the cuts in the short term to protect long term, and to jeopardize it. We would have been dealing with this for a very long time, and I think the impact would have been much greater. So it was easy to say, please, let's do what we need to do. But to answer your question, it's not just that the Bahamas took these steps. If we look at, let me use Canada, we did not close our borders to Canada. Canadians, as long as they had not traveled to any of the places on the restricted list, they were free to travel to the Bahamas. Every day I was getting a message. Sunwing has cancelled all flights, domestic flights only. WestJet has cancelled all flights. Air Canada. I say that to say that when the world started taking steps, we were impacted long before we arrived at our decision, because every country, they were taking care of their own first, and they were closing their borders. So while I believe wholeheartedly we did what we needed to do, we were going to see a steep decline in any way. The President of the United States strongly urged every American citizen to return home. Nothing we could do. I could advertise till I'm blue in the face, but if your government is saying return home now, they're not going to travel. They will not. And so I think for globally, we're all stopping, pausing, but it gives us in the Ministry of Tourism great opportunity to really sit back, assess, plan. We've been here before on a smaller scale. If we look at Hurricane Dorian, we thought that was huge at the time. But we learned from that what we needed to do to come back stronger than ever. And that's what we're using this period for, to prepare, so that when this passes us by, we can be first out of the gate.
Excellent. Listen, ladies, if I could, I would talk to you so much longer, because there's just so many more we want to get into. But just hearing from your responses, and that's the perfect note to end on, Director. You've already, taken steps in advance to prepare us for this space, and we trust that as we're going through this, you are taking the steps to prepare us for what comes next, which will hopefully be better days. So ladies, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your work and your passion and the commitment you both have to making sure that we are safe and secure, both health-wise and economically.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're watching Bahamas at Sunrise. We'll be back with more after this commercial break.
Suites Paradise Island is the best kept secret in the Bahamas. Located directly next door to the Atlantis Resort, you'll receive all the privileges of an Atlantis guest with all the benefits of a Comfort Suite stay. Enjoy everything Atlantis has to offer, including Aquaventure Water Park, plus all the amenities of Comfort Suites. Free Wi-Fi, free breakfast daily, and kids stay, play, and eat free. Visit ComfortSuitesPI.com.
Welcome back to Bahamas at Sunrise. Church services, Bible studies, and church meetings are suspended until April 4th. Now, these are disturbing times, especially when we're battling between faith and fair. And many people have raised concerns about the fact that some churches have not gone into session as normal. This morning, we want to have a very serious conversation about this with the Bishop of the Anglican Diocese of the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos Islands, the Right Reverend Leish Boyd. Good morning and welcome to Bahamas at Sunrise.
Good morning and thank you for having me.
A pleasure to have you with us, Bishop. I was able to watch you conduct Mass yesterday morning through TV, which of course was new for many Anglicans, and I'm sure new for Christians in general who've been going to church for some time and missed the opportunity to commune with God and each other in that space. You yourself said, though, that a break in normal activities and routine will not harm the church or diminish her. Tell me why.
The church is the body of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
That is a fellowship of believers. And if you look at Christian history over the last 2,000 years, many, many things have happened as the world and world communities and world culture have all evolved.
Mm-hmm.
The church has been faced with challenges in various times and in various places.
Mm-hmm.
And what the church has always done is the church has adapted.
Okay.
And so if we are subject to a set of circumstances, that does not make us any less the church.
Okay.
Because we are the body of Christ. And Paul completes that by saying we are the body of Christ and members one of another.
Mm-hmm.
So we are connected to each other. And that is not limited to buildings. It's not limited to location. Wherever we meet and fellowship and interact, we are the church. The hymn writer says, Jesus, where thy people meet,
Mm-hmm.
there they behold thy mercy seat.
Okay. Now, I hear that, and I can agree that you can have a relationship with God and with believers outside of a structure. The challenge comes in when this passes. How then do we encourage people to come back to doors?
We have to trust God in time to work that out.
Okay.
The same ones of us who were traumatized
Mm-hmm.
and unsettled
Mm-hmm.
by the current circumstances, it'll be up to us to reassociate ourselves. And many of us, I believe, will be anxious to get back into that communal space.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Now, the other concern then is how do we operate in this time without the structure? So yesterday we saw you on television. What is the plan moving forward, particularly for the Anglican churches? Will they be doing services online? I saw one or two doing those yesterday, but is that an independent thing driven by the parish, or is that something that would come as a mandate from your office?
Well, the position taken, that is the suspending of gatherings, came as a result of an understanding of the global pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
the best advice from the disciplines which God created and which God inspired.
Mm-hmm.
That's the scientists, the medical profession, the public health people. We've taken their best advice to limit gatherings. And this is a measure that we've taken for this period. And what I have said is that we cease to gather,
Mm-hmm.
but we stay in touch.
Okay.
And I've instructed individual parishes to stay in touch with their flock and the wider community by every means possible.
Okay.
I encourage them to use the telephone,
Mhm.
the internet,
Mhm.
social media, technology.
Mhm.
Many parishes already stream their services and have various forms of connection through
Right.
technology.
Right.
And I've asked those parishes to continue and expand that.
Okay.
And of course, it's an easy sell, because if you can't gather the way you used to,
Mhm.
then what you have to do is gather by what means you can.
Okay.
So my service was a service for the entire diocese, which
Mhm.
we had on ZNS and cable,
Mhm.
TV, on Facebook, and also a link through the diocesan website.
Okay.
That's what I did.
Mhm.
But the individual parishes are being asked to do their things, and so we've had persons sending out evening prayer. There have been clergy doing daily devotions, parishes doing Stations of the Cross,
Okay.
etc.
Okay.
And we are seeking to keep our connection by whatever means possible. As the bishop, I will do the Eucharist every Sunday,
Mhm.
but at the individual parish level, they're being encouraged to make use of technology, and many of them are. A lot of parishes already, well, every parish has a membership list.
Right.
Many parishes have email lists,
Right.
and so they're using all of those means just to stay in touch.
Okay.
And we have to, if we are the church, we have to continue to connect and interact by the means that we can
given the fact that our not gathering is as a result of our best advice, given what is a serious and deadly global pandemic.
But Bishop, what about communion? It's one thing to receive the word, I guess, from an online space or to even worship through music. But communion is a vital part of the Anglican, we call it the Anglican communion, right? And so how do we go about addressing the fact that some of us who are used to taking communion weekly are not getting that?
Again, circumstances present themselves and the church has to respond in a responsible fashion.
Okay.
So here we are now unable to gather and unable for the faithful to receive Holy Communion and to participate in some of the other sacraments. God is still God. God understands the circumstances. And what we teach is that even though we may not be able to come and receive the body and the blood of Christ, that does not mean that the grace of God is not still active and working in us. It does not mean that God is still not touching us and blessing our lives with his grace. Because the sacraments, and Holy Communion is one of them, but the sacraments are simply means by which God imparts his grace. And while communion is an extra special one of those with extra special and powerful significance for us, God is such a great God and all-powerful that his grace will not be limited toward us because we are in a temporary circumstance.
Let's talk about the temporary circumstance then and this idea of the pandemic. You continue to bring it up. There are some people that are saying to us as Christians, and we've even seen this in churches outside of our denomination yesterday, as Christians it is a fundamental right for us to show that we are faithful by visibly going to church and going against the grain because we have to believe what God says, not what man says. How do we address those people of that belief?
Well, first of all, the position we have arrived at is a stewardship position. We look at the circumstances around the world. We look at the science, the medicine, the public health parameters. And we've made a decision that this is one of the best ways to limit the opportunity for the virus to spread. That is by ceasing to gather in numbers. That's the decision we've taken. And that's a decision we make taking the advice of the disciplines which God has created. And we accept the advice of those disciplines all the time. We go to doctors. You know, we seek specialist advice. If we have a problem at our home, we bring in a specialist to correct it. And so we are making a decision based on reason, which God gave us to use, and the best advice that we have. Now, persons may say the church should continue to gather. My position is, given all the data that we have, that is unwise. So it's not a matter of having faith, it's a matter of faith being put into practice. Because faith is not in isolation. So the person who argues that I disagree with for the reasons which I have given. Church buildings will remain available for people who wish to do private devotions and meditation. That's fine. But to say faith should cause us to go against best advice is unwise.
I like the fact that you're using wise because we pray for wisdom and discernment, and so we have to be able to put that in balance with the idea of faith and putting faith into practice.
That is correct. So our faith is not in a vacuum. Our faith is accompanied by right thinking, by consultation, by considering matters, and then making a decision which honors the God who gave us all these faculties and resources with which to live our lives.
All right. Well, Bishop, we want to thank you so much for joining us this morning on Bahamas at Sunrise. I think you gave some brilliant answers, and I hope that those are ones that people could inwardly digest, as we say, and reflect on, because we are doing the best we can, given the faculties that God has given us during this time. So thank you for joining us.
And may I close with a short prayer?
Yes, you may.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Almighty God, you are all powerful, and we ask you to bless our world and our two countries, the Bahamas and the Turks and Caicos Islands, at this time of concern. May your peace come to us in the upheaval of fear and worry. May your calm strengthen us to make the right decisions. May your strength be with us to help us each day, and give us your heart that we might love and support and encourage and pray for each other during this time. Give us wisdom and strength always to make sound decisions, and give us discipline to abide by the provisions which will help this virus not to spread as much as it can. Father, go before us today in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
Do you want to know more about the scriptures, the early Christian church, its teachings, suffering, other religions, the authenticity of the Bible? The Anglican Theological Institute is for you. Enroll in a 3-year certificate program. Classes are conducted from NASA and Freeport on Saturday mornings. Don't miss a class. Stay connected anytime, anywhere, with high-speed internet. Contact us at 603-2481. Visit our Facebook page. Pick up an application form at any Anglican church or at Addington House on Sands Road. The Anglican Theological Institute is for you.
We get up early every morning to offer safe and dependable service. Where quality service is paramount. An excellent travel experience is priority. Connecting the islands of the Bahamas to the world. Bahamas Air. We don't just fly here, we live here.
Maybe you have Rev Phone with its tons of awesome and free features. Or you're watching great content on Rev TV. Or maybe you have our blazing fast internet. So you already know how good it is to have one Rev service. Imagine if you had all three. With Trio, you get all of our services for $99. And you get entered into our $250,000 cashback Christmas. So the question is, why don't you have Trio? Just call 601-8992 or email us at trio@cablebahamas.com. Rev, you and us together.
Welcome back to Bahamas at Sunrise. We're at the halfway point on this marvelous Monday.
Marvelous Monday indeed.
I'm Anastasia Felicius.
And I'm Philip Simon.
Thank you for staying with us.
Yeah, it's good. Listen, always good. Terrence, throw that thing to me. Always good here in Bahamas at Sunrise. Such great information happening here. Very, very good interview with the bishop.
Yeah,
very great interview.
Thank you. We didn't shake hands. We loved each other from afar. Yeah. But I appreciate the sanitizer. We'll keep that going. Just put that there so you can see it.
You hear this terminology sometimes called stupid faith.
Right.
And I'm glad that you asked that question. I'm glad that he made that. Because, you have some people out there who kind of, these memes are just incredible, as it relates to all kinds of things. But then it talks about, well, where's your faith? Where's your faith? So that means now the church can't get together no more. Where's your faith in God? It's just so silly sometimes. And I'm glad the bishop clarified that. It's right thinking.
Yeah.
It's sensibility.
Yeah.
And, we're all still human, right? And God didn't design us. He didn't design us to be stupid.
He didn't. And the Bible talks specifically, it has so many passages on wisdom that I think that we cannot have the idea of faith as going against the grain, right? And the same people would just not walk in front of a car saying, oh, I have the faith of God.
Right, exactly.
Because they knew that would be stupid.
Yeah.
Simultaneously, and I want to be careful with my wording because I don't want to insult anyone, but simultaneously, you wouldn't walk into oncoming traffic, much as Jesus, when he was tempted during these 40 days, was told Satan, don't do that to God. You don't put him to the test, right? Don't test the Lord your God. Simultaneously, we have to take that into consideration now and acknowledge that faith is so much bigger than a building, and the way that we can commune is so much bigger than a building. And while I know I look forward to returning to church when that time is appropriate, during this time we have to use the wisdom that faith encourages us to use so that we are doing our active part in making sure that faith and works are going together.
Yeah, no doubt. And what about communion delivery? Communion delivery services.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I didn't ask him about that. No, well, the church has its own storehouse of wines, but I think the challenge would be you're still going person to person, and so now, you know, you go into 200 members, one individual, you still have that capacity to pass it on because you've gone into so many homes to deliver the communion. So
or just come at a set time and, you know, do social distancing 3 feet apart and stand outside and, you know, one at a time.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to work. No,
we'll
no. But God is good. His grace is sufficient, as the bishop said. And so we will wait to join again in order to
Yes. The Director of Education is here, Marcellus Taylor. He's going to be talking about what is happening with our young people. Of course, even though schools are closed until the 14th, I think now literally the school is closed to teachers and administrators for the most part. I think I heard some type of communication from the minister on that yesterday. But of course, virtual learning, virtual classroom, it's ongoing. I mean, and the thing about it, we've been talking about this a long time. You know, Bahamas at Sunrise, Marcellus was here from, I think, last year, or last year actually, planning for this. So I'm so glad that it's been implemented. And of course, for them, it's just
I think for me the biggest concern is our students in Abaco and Grand Bahama who would have missed a significant amount of school at the beginning of the year due to the storms, and then now having to catch up, and then again missing so much time in between. So hopefully you can address that.
33 days, I
Talk to us about the national exams and what that means for them. And then we've got Dr. Carlos Thomas here too. He's going to be talking with us about, one, protecting our young kids from COVID-19, and then two, how do we communicate with them about what's happening and why it's important. So we've got more to come in the second half, and it's going to be great.
Yeah, you know, and what has been absolutely great is the weather.
Yeah, it has been. It really has
we look out our windows, right?
Which is why everybody had to go to the beach yesterday because the weather's so good. Here's Godfrey Burnside with a second look at weather.
Weather at Sunrise, brought to you by Bahamas First. First in insurance, today, tomorrow.
Thank you, Star, and good morning, Bahamas. And yes, second look at weather at Sunrise. Persistent high pressure ridge across the islands. Winds have dropped off the northwest Bahamas and still maintain a little breezy conditions over the central and southeastern islands over the next couple of days ahead of another weak cold front that moving near Grand Bahama Abaco by Thursday. In your marine forecast, those winds today east to southeast to 10 to 15 knots, sea 2 to 4 feet over the northwest Bahamas, with 15 knots, sea 2 to 5 feet over the central and southeastern islands. On Tuesday, those winds become southeast to south at 10 to 15 knots, sea 2 to 4 feet in northwest Bahamas, continuing east to southeast at 15 knots, sea 2 to 5 feet over the central and southeastern islands. Then on Thursday, those winds become south to southwest at 10 to 15 knots, sea 2 to 4 feet in northwest Bahamas, southeast to south at 10 to 15 knots, sea 2 to 4 feet over the central and southeastern islands. Your tides. You can expect a high tide at 8:14 this morning. Your next low tide at 2:31 this afternoon. High gain this evening at 8:32. Sunset 7:23 this evening. Rises more at 7:09. UV index 7. Your water temperature 77 degrees Fahrenheit. Honeymoon phase. No moon. Standard look. Looking at partly sunny skies. Some warm temperatures will be coming. Those temperatures midweek will be in the upper 80s at daytime. Then have that cold front moving in the extreme northwest by Thursday. Slight cool down, I would say. On the warm side, it'll tend to be in the low 80s at daytime and the upper 60s at nighttime. That puts you up in your final look at weather at sunrise. I'm Godfrey Burnside. Back to you, Phil.
Thank you very much, Godfrey. We are in the midst of a global pandemic, coronavirus, COVID-19 virus disease. The whole world is changing right before our eyes. The Ministry of Education, of course, has canceled school, postponed school until the 14th of April. Very pleased to have back on Bahamas at Sunrise once again, Marcellus Taylor, Director of Education in the Ministry of Education. The kids are home. Some of them are also at the beach. Marcellus, thank you so much for taking the time to give us another update on where we are. You know, we would have heard just a recent communication, I don't know if it was yesterday, regarding further closures to now some teachers as well as administrators of schools. Is that correct?
Well, I think the announcement that you're talking about was an internal memo, which brought clarity to what we expect from school administrators in terms of where they should work from. We've moved, based on the advice by the public health officials, to try and have as many of the operations brought down to a minimum. and also to have people work remotely. And that memo was saying that. And so just let me make a clarification. Although when we say schools are closed, what we're talking about is the face-to-face instruction is not there. So we're trying to make as many efforts as we can to have people work remotely, and also trying to see how we can deliver educational content to our students remotely.
How has the process been thus far? I mean, it's probably been about a week or so into it. How's the process been thus far?
Well, a lot has happened so far. Last Monday, for instance, on Tuesday, we had a meeting of all our technical officers in the Ministry of Education, the curriculum developers, the schools management personnel, the district superintendents, to come up with a plan for how we would respond to this COVID-19 crisis. Since that two-day meeting, colleagues have been working, almost around the clock to try and develop a system so that we could still provide instruction. We are seeking to provide instruction virtually. We have some limited experience in it because we've commenced the virtual learning school, which in its design, in August when we launched it, its design was to target the remote family islands. And that has gone on and has gone on quite well. But now what we're talking about is to incrementally see how we could provide learning opportunities for all our students. And so this, in a sense, is a challenge for us because it has come, in a sudden, But, I think our colleagues are doing their best to rise to the occasion.
And when we talk about the virtual classroom, actually, even before we get there, obviously there's some tools that are required, tablets probably being chief among them. Are the students currently equipped with these devices to receive lessons at home, or is that something also that needs to happen?
Well, I mean, the Bahamas and IRCA provides reports that speaks to this, but the Bahamas has a high level of penetration in terms of ICTs, internet connectivity, and so on. So you assume if people have internet, there will be, some level some high level of access commensurate. Although we realize that there are some students who would not have. And so we are trying now to work to find ways to ensure that those who have access can get content delivered to them. And then trying to find other ways for those who do not currently have access. And so it may involve us utilizing television. It may involve us doing one or two other things. But this is new territory, and some of the things that you initially think of, then you realize it's a problem with it. So, for instance, some of the colleagues wanted to develop paper-based resources that can be distributed. But then, of course, some people bring objections to that because they say we don't know how the disease is transmitted necessarily and so on. But, our goal is to reach as many as we can as quickly as we can. So there will be some groups who may not be immediately included, but as we develop our competency and as methods and options become available, then we will include them into what we're doing.
How many students are we talking about in terms of the educational system across the Commonwealth?
Well, in the government sector, we have about 45,000 students. In the private, we have about 20 or 25,000 students. We are targeting providing for all students because, we don't necessarily know what private schools are doing. We don't necessarily know. So in our plans, we're thinking about catering to all. So on Thursday night, we launched the registration for the virtual learning that we are now trying to put in place. And as of last night, I think about 9,000 or so have registered already. We want more to register, so anybody who's interested, who has children, whatever, and need them to be enrolled, all they have to do is go on our website, Ministry of Education, Bahamas.com, and look for the button that says virtual learning and go on there and register your child. So far we have, of that number, we have about 10% who are enrolled in private schools normally who have already signed up. And so, as many.
As many, okay. And of course, Grand Bahama and Abaco would have already had challenges this year in terms of Dorian and missing class. I think you would have mentioned at least 33 days in Grand Bahamas instance. Is there anything special or different that's happening over there with regards to virtual learning, or the same process applies?
Well, the same process at this point applies. Okay. When Grand Mama was hit with Dorian, we didn't have yet the capacity to provide them with virtual learning opportunities. Okay. But to the credit of the people of Grand Mama, they've really buckled down a lot, and they were making a lot of ground over the time that they were in school. But then now this is another setback. Okay. But you know, we're going to respond as best as we can. We believe that we'll be able to respond adequately. But our part is only one part. Okay. The other part is what parents and students do. Right. And I want to encourage parents and students to make sure that they make the most of whatever opportunities we provide. If you go on our website, we as the days unfold, we're putting resources there, things to guide parents as to how to support their children while they're at home, things about, you know, being careful about sites that your child might go on and so forth. And all these other things to support home instruction, home-based instruction. As we get further into this, we will provide more of the instruction ourselves. But in the interim, parents, just as a standard rule, parents should be supporting their children. So we've covered content for how many ever months we were in school. Even if you just review that content and make sure you understand, that the students understand those things that they've already covered well, is even a push forward. And we have things like the list of all the subjects and topics that students are supposed to take. They have textbooks, and so we provide them some kind of help so that they can know how to guide their children.
And teachers have obviously made themselves available for support during this.
Well, you know, and one of the good things about this is that in this kind of time, we have some organic developments, right? So the ministry is making some efforts, and we're trying to coordinate and do as much as we can. But schools and individual teachers have already responded. And that I like that, because not only is it innovative, but it also shows that there is this genuine care for the development of children by teachers, by school administrators. And we thank them for that kind of initiative, and we want to further encourage it among people. This is not the time to worry about all the rules and who's supposed to do what and who's supposed to do it. If you can help, you chip in the best way you can. And just one more thing that I would like to say. We have education providers in the private sector as well. The Ministry of Education is very open to working with them so that we could develop an indigenous bank of content, and so that we could share whatever they develop, whatever we develop, we can share with one another and advance the one goal that we have, which is to provide quality education to the children of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
No doubt about it. And just to reinforce that point relative to the love and care that teachers have, is certainly a special breed of human beings. The learning environment is just so much more than that, and we talk about the fact that meal vouchers are an important part of daily life for so many. The ministry has also, I believe, provided options for collection relative to meal vouchers for those who need it.
Yes, for those who are currently on our lunch program, vouchers can be collected in New Providence on Wednesday between the hours of 9 and 12 at the school to which the student attends. In the Family Islands, the arrangements are being made through the district superintendents or the island administrator. And so they could just listen out for what will happen in their particular island.
Okay, great. Everybody's wondering, well, you know, what about the calendar? What about the external exams? Will school be extended into the summer? Any insight into those topics?
Well, those are clearly options and issues that we're looking at. We're being guided by the public health agencies who lead on this. We don't know in the first instance how long this emergency order will last. And even if after the emergency order clears, there might be some other considerations that are taken. And so we'll be guided by them. But those are all options. In the first instance, extending the school year. In the second instance, moving back exam dates and so forth, if those things are possible.
All right. Listen, thank you so much. Marcellus Taylor, Director of Education, Ministry of Education. Good to see you once again. Continue to do an excellent job that you're doing.
Thank you.
All right. You're watching Bahamas at Sunrise. We'll be right back.
This is Eddie, and Eddie's a change counter. This is Sean. Sean doesn't have to count change because when Sean purchases a plan with Alive, it's VAT inclusive. Keep things simple. Just like Alive's all-new VAT-inclusive prepaid plans with more talk, more text, and even more data. So don't be an Eddie. Freedom simplified. Alive. Believe in best.
Comfort Suites Paradise Island is the best kept secret in the Bahamas. Located directly next door to the Atlantis Resort, you'll receive all the privileges of an Atlantis guest with all the benefits of a Comfort Suite stay. Enjoy everything Atlantis has to offer, including aqua-vented water park, plus all the amenities of Comfort Suites. Free Wi-Fi, free breakfast daily, and kids stay, play, and eat free. Visit ComfortSuitesPI.com.
Welcome back to Bahamas at Sunrise. Thank you for staying with us. This morning we're talking with Dr. Carlos Thomas. You know him as our resident pediatrician. He's going to be talking with us about COVID-19 and specifically how we interact with our children about this virus and why it's important that we protect them. Good morning, Dr. Thomas. Welcome to Bahamas at Sunrise.
Good morning. Lovely to be here. Thank you.
Always a pleasure to have you with us. Obviously, the circumstances are not the best worldwide right now, but we did want to get your perspective on COVID-19. We've had several people on the show before, so we know it's a virus very similar to the cold and flu in terms of how it presents, but can be very different in terms of how our respiratory system responds to it. Am I missing anything there that you want to add to?
That's correct. That's one of the challenges of the COVID-19 in that the symptoms overlap with the common cold and the flu and so on.
Right.
So you have to have an index of suspicion to accurately diagnose the patients.
All right. Now, one of the things that we've heard, and you know, so much information has been going around on social media, WhatsApp, Facebook, is that this doesn't necessarily impact young children as much. But I was reading a story yesterday about a 12-year-old in Atlanta that is fighting for her life today as a result of COVID-19.
Yes.
How concerned should we be about this virus in our children?
It's an oversimplification to say that only older persons are affected.
Okay.
So children can and will get COVID-19.
Okay.
When you look at large countries and when you look at the number of cases we've had worldwide, most children have mild cases.
Okay.
So most of the sick patients are indeed older. Most of the very sick patients are indeed persons who have underlying medical conditions, who are immunocompromised. But we do not want to get the message across that children cannot be affected.
Okay.
That would be a disaster.
Okay.
And so we have to pay special attention to our children.
Okay.
Now, because children oftentimes have little or no symptoms or mild symptoms, it may be overlooked.
Right.
And they can be carriers of the disease. So it's very important to teach our children proper hygiene. We cannot emphasize enough the importance of hand washing and proper hand washing, which means soap and water for at least 20 seconds.
Right.
If that is not available, then any of the alcohol-containing hand sanitizers would be a good substitute.
Okay.
Teaching our children the importance of coughing in their sleeves or tissue and discarding it and then washing their hands.
Right.
The importance of proper hygiene is important, and even beyond COVID-19, and the time will come, hopefully soon, when this will be in our rearview mirror.
Right.
These hand sanitizing, hand hygiene practices are very important.
Okay. And why are they so important? I mean, I appreciate that I've been washing my hands for a very long time, so this is nothing new to me. But why is it critical in the transmission or the spread of COVID-19 that we stop it by something as simple as hand washing? How is it transferred? Why that matters?
Let's start with the most common way of contracting the disease, and that's through person-to-person contact. Someone who coughs or sneezes in close proximity, which is why the Ministry of Health and the public health authorities have been stressing the importance of social distancing. And that's why our schools and churches are closed. But apart from that, if someone sneezes or coughs, the droplets can land on surfaces that we may touch, and then we put our hands to our faces. So clearly, if your hands are clean, properly sanitized, you minimize the risk of contracting the disease in that way.
Okay. And you've said to us already that the kids may not necessarily get as sick as some older persons might, but they can be carriers of that disease, which to my mind would make sense then why schools are closed.
Yes.
But for kids who are missing the opportunity to engage in a learning environment, who want to see their friends, who may see their parents doing things that they're not used to seeing them do before, how do we communicate what COVID-19 is? What is the conversation that we need to have with our young children so that they appreciate what's happening and why?
So the first thing is that children know what's happening. They listen, they hear, they watch us, they listen to the news, they hear us speak about it. So we have to have open and honest conversation with our children. We have to provide an environment where they feel comfortable to come and share their fears. Some are fearful about will it impact them. Some are fearful will this affect mom and dad and my friends. So they need to understand that this is a disease. I mean, simple terms, is spread by coughing, sneezing. So the things we discussed earlier about hand washing becomes very important. And it's also very important to let your child know that everybody has a responsibility. So if everyone takes heed to proper hand washing and proper respiratory hygiene, and that will help to limit the spread of the disease. Also, we have to try to limit the news that they hear about COVID. It cannot be that all they hear is COVID all day. That will contribute to their fear and their anxiety. And we have to let them know it's going to be okay. That we're going to overcome this.
All right. That's important. I hadn't thought of that, but you're right. They hear so much all the time, and if everything they're hearing is something that results in us even looking fearful, then that transfers to them. So we have to be cautious of that. We saw so many people go to the beach yesterday, and young children were among them. What do we say to parents about things like that, taking them to the park, taking them to a pool, taking them to a public beach? As they're out of school, parents are obviously looking for things to entertain their time. How do we address that with parents?
And parents need to understand and see the big picture. Social distancing is crucial to minimize the rate at which new cases emerge. And if we don't pay attention to that, we could potentially get to the point where our health services are overwhelmed. We do not want that to happen. So it's very important that parents find other innovative ways of their children interacting in smaller groups. And children pay attention to what we do. So you teach your child by being a good example.
And is there a particular step that you would want us to take if we see that our child's not doing well? It may be cold, maybe flu. Obviously, we can't diagnose it, and normally we would naturally bring them to a pediatrician's office. We know that, generally speaking, the health officials have said to us, if you do have symptoms, either stay at home and self-medicate. We can't always do that with kids, especially because of their ages and what medication is applicable to them. And they've also said, or call ahead. What is the procedure in your office in particular, and what do you suggest for other people who want to take their kids to the pediatrician if they're not feeling well during this time?
The same advice. We encourage our clients to call in ahead of time to discuss with the doctor. That's the recommendation. You don't want your office filled with people who are sick, who are waiting in the waiting room. So it's responsible to call ahead, and that's what we encourage. Our staff, are taught that if someone comes in coughing or sneezing, they're immediately masked and taken to an isolated area.
Okay.
So that's very important. I want to touch on, before we leave, another point that's important. Schools are out, or children are home, we have to make sure they're properly occupied.
Okay.
So some schools, have distance learning, etc. But all children have to do schoolwork while are on this break. It's not a holiday.
Okay.
It's a time away from school.
Okay.
So the things that we would normally do, like paying attention to bedtime, that's very important.
Okay.
I need to go home and spread that message to my 9-year-old. They have to wash their hands. They have to practice social distancing at home. Very, very important.
Okay.
And you have to monitor what you're watching on their TVs and iPads. That's very, very important.
Okay. How do those things impact their health long term, particularly their ability to function once we do return to school, which we do anticipate will happen at some point, and hopefully sooner rather than later? How will distracting them from their regular routine impact that negatively when it is time to go back?
Well, if they relax at home and don't pay attention to their schoolwork, this emergency order will be lifted at some point, hopefully soon. We'll be going back to school, and they're going to be behind.
Okay.
Very important.
Okay.
I just had a thought as we were speaking. We have young children at home. Some parents are home as well. In a few seconds, I want to give a telephone number for a very important agency in the U.S. It's called the Poison Control Center.
Okay.
And occasionally our children or toddlers get into medicines, household products that may be harmful.
Right.
And so there's this agency that's available 24 hours a day and 7 days a week to take questions from parents and to give advice about whether you should worry or not, go to the hospital or not.
Okay.
And so that number is a 1-800 number.
Okay.
But from Nassau, from the Bahamas, it's 1-880
Okay.
222-1222.
All right.
That's
So
1-880-222-1222.
Excellent, excellent. I'm going to write it down as soon as I get off the set because we know that kids can get into anything and
Certainly.
everything, especially during this time. But Dr. Thomas, we want to thank you for joining us. I think you've given us quite a bit of advice today, wanting to remind us to keep our routines as normal as possible with our kids, making sure that they do have bedtimes,
Yes.
and that they're not spending all of their time in front of iPad screens or TV screens. And then, of course, making sure that they're washing their hands and that we're having sensible conversations with them about COVID-19.
Yes.
And not only listening to news about it that is negative, so that they're associating that negatively. So thank you so much for joining us.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
You're watching Bahamas at Sunrise. We'll be back with more after this commercial break.
One thing, two things, new thing, old things, things that are small, things that are grand, things that fit just right in the palm of your hand. Fox Hill Nursery, a large selection of garden supplies. If you can see it in your mind, you can find it at Fox Hill Nursery.
Since 1967, FOCO has been a vital part of the Grand Bahama community, providing high-quality products and great customer service. Today, we continue to work hard and remain focused on fueling growth for people throughout the Bahamas.
That's got to do it for us, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We're glad that you joined us.
Yes, and listen, despite it all, find time to smile, find time to make somebody else happy, find time to still be alive and live, right?
Yeah, and to be incredibly grateful,
Yes.
be incredibly grateful.
Absolutely, absolutely.
We'll be back at some point.
Friday.
Yeah, on Friday, they say.
Yeah.
So you guys Take care and make it a safe and wonderful week.